Welcome back to Chapter 5. This is part of my year-long project to document my dad's life, and we are basing it off a book he wrote about his life. This covers Chapter 5, which is one of the funnier chapters. There's a lot of great stories about his college years. So I do have to show this off. I actually have his old college mug here, 1962. Yeah, look, even has his name on it. Somehow I still have his drinking mug. We're going to talk about all of his crazy college stuff he did, and to show you guys he wasn't a square, because that's how it was said back then. He was not a square. It was pretty surprising to hear this stuff, because you don't hear about it like when you're a little kid, but now we're both adults that he's actually going no holds barred and sharing what really happened. It is pretty darn funny. So I think you're going to really enjoy this chapter. We are back. It has been about a month or two, I guess, since we did this.
Mid-October.
Mid-October. It is now right near the New Year's.
Right.
So you can see behind us we don't have leaves anymore. We're going to dive into Chapter 5, the college years. It says the college years from 1958 to 1963, the disastrous first year. So let's start with what happened your first year.
Well, the first year of college, I started at 16, and I never had to really study very hard in high school, not like they do today, and so I presumed college was pretty much the same. I believe there was at least one or two courses I didn't buy books from, and probably did not study much, okay? To put it bluntly, I almost flunked out. I got a D- in chemistry, only saved by the lab instructor who convinced the instructor that I should get a D-, not an F, because she liked me. And I got an F in analytical geometry, and I got a B in English, and I think everything else, and of course an A in swimming, because I taught the swimming class. I was actually asked by the swim instructor to teach it. He'd give me an A+, so he could sit and read the newspaper, because he knew me. He had tried to hire me to run his pools when I was in high school. But other than that, it was a disaster, and I got...
what school were you in now?
George Washington University Engineering School.
And they actually had a swimming pool and all that in the school?
No. The university, though, had a physical ed program, and the school credited swimming, but you took it at the YMCA.
Oh, and you were already an instructor over at the Y.
Yeah, I'd been an instructor at the YMCA also, yes. And of course, I went to high school there, and I spent, 5 years in swimming pools from the 7th and 8th grade on. So I was a good swimmer, and I taught swimming and ran swimming pools in high school, some of my first jobs. And this guy had tried to hire me before, so he knew me, he saw me as a student in the class, and he invited me into his room to talk, which was next to the swimming pool, and said, "This stuff bores me, and I know you can teach it. You teach it, I give you an A+. And this was at the time when the YMCA was still all male, swimming pool and everything. So I was the only guy in the swim class that wore a bathing suit, because everybody else in the YMCA for 100 years, all the men swam nude. And so this was also a shock to a lot of students coming in there who,
So they would take this class and didn't realize there was nude swimming, and then the first day they'd be like, everybody disrobe.
I'm guessing that, but all I remember was kind of a unique experience, because all these guys are 17 and 18, and they're all coming in with two hands over their private area, standing there freezing. And then you have them get in the pool and start swimming and teaching everything. But it's just a funny memory, so I mentioned that. But the rest of the first year was really kind of a disaster. And it was GW. My dad had gotten an engineering degree there. So somehow, maybe arranged by my dad, the dean called me into his office and notified me that it was GW's policy that you had just one semester to get off probation, and if your total average wasn't a 2.0, this is back at a time when grades were not easy to get, unlike today, they're much easier. But anyway, that I was out. And he said, you got about a 1 in 100 chance of doing that because your grades were so bad. Then he said something, he said, if your dad got a degree here and he graduated top of the class, so I got to believe there's something between your ears. You know, it's kind of funny remark because I have big ears, but it scared the hell out of me. I bought the books that I needed and got an A in analytical geometry the second time. Anyway, ended up with a 2.01 average after the first year. By the time I graduated, my grades were pretty good, but that's how I started.
You squeaked by.
Squeaked. Underneath the rug by, yeah.
So tell me about your distraction of Phi Kappa Alpha. Why did you pledge and what's that all about?
In my second year, I went through the pledge program where you go to all of these fraternities and they all tell you how great they are and how different they are. And the truth is, they're all pretty much the same. And you join them because you're 17 and it sounds like a great party and you want to be thought of as in to something, okay? It turns out that that fraternity I joined was different because strangely, it was wide open in the sense that not everybody looked the same, not everybody came from similar backgrounds. We actually had war veterans in there from the Korean War who were on their GI Bill coming through. We had a 17-year-old like me. It was party animal, and it was kind of like Animal House, quite frankly, if you've ever seen the movie, when they had parties on the weekends. And here I got off probation and very stupidly, I guess, said, well, listen, I'm okay now, so I'll join this. And of course, I got very active in that for the next 4 years. It took me 5 years to go through school because I did most of it at night. But I really enjoyed it and eventually became president. I was social chairman 2 or 3 times. They kept voting me to be social chairman because I threw a good party. And
that's a Lupo trait.
Apparently it was. I don't seem to have that skill anymore, but I sure as hell had it then. Yeah. So it was a great distraction. It was one of several distractions.
And give me an idea of what fraternities were like in the 1950s. Like, you talk about a beer machine in the book.
Oh yeah, the beer machine.
Tell me about this beer machine and how Animal House, basically the movie, ripped off your real fraternity.
Well, it probably ripped off a lot of fraternities, but
it was similar.
Yeah, you know, who knows how to drink when they're 17 to 22, and the more you drink, the more macho you are. So there was always beer going on. You could go there at 8 in the morning, somebody was having a beer. And by the way, that caused some pretty bad grades in kids that probably didn't make it through. But one of the things we loved was the beer machine. It was very unique. And in the 50s, for colas and soft drinks, a lot of times you'd go into a market, small market. There'd be this thing that was like a chest of drawers. I'll put my hands up here. It was like a chest and not drawers. And it was like a refrigerator turned on its back and laid down. And you open the door, and here's a bunch of metal rails. And in between each metal rails are the top of beer bottles. And you can't just yank it out because it's jammed in the metal rails. So you have to drag it down to the end of the rails, put your quarter in, and put it into this area that the beer bottle head comes in between these two metal pieces, put your quarter in, and then grab the top of the beer bottle, pull it up, and bring it out. And you got your beer for a quarter. Well, the big trick was to get 2 beers for a quarter. So you just barely could get a second beer in there. You push the first one and tilt it, push the second one in, put your quarter and do it. Once in a while it worked, 50% of the time. When it didn't work, you didn't get any beer. But whoever was sitting near the beer machine would just sit there waiting for somebody to get 2 beers to ask them if they could have the second beer. So that was part of that was a distraction. 8 in the morning, beers all over the place.
So you basically had a beer bum just hanging out waiting, like a homeless guy whenever you go to the ATM. They'd be like,
There was no such thing as a beer bong, but there was definitely a beer machine. And then, of course, you played the games on the tables where you slap the tables and whoever gets named or something has to chug a whole beer. And that was good for wasting somebody out.
Amazing to me is we played the same drinking games in high school thinking we were all original. We called it thumper, where you pound on the
thumper,
table.
right.
Bum, 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 bum.
Yeah.
And we did the exact same, and I have no idea where that came from.
Probably 50 years before me.
For you, yeah. It's probably some like old Navy game or something.
Yeah.
So what was moose milk?
Moose milk was a cheap way of making everybody think they were getting drunk during pledge time especially. But we couldn't afford to buy a lot of booze. So we had a bathtub. We put it on top of the bar in the fraternity house. And you basically take cheap white wine, like Sauterne or whatever. And who knew what was good wine then? Whatever it was a gallon for a couple of bucks. You pour it in there. Then you pour in a bunch of sparkling water, and then you have champagne bottles, and you pour a couple of champagnes in there, and you set them out front so that people think that everything in there is champagne. So as all these new freshmen come through that you're trying to convince what a wild house is, what a wild house your fraternity is, you're giving them these things that are basically seltzer water, and we threw oranges, squeezed oranges, threw any crap in there. And actually, the tradition was to put it in a big milk jug, shake it in front of everybody, then pour it in and put the champagne in, and that's what you drank for moose milk. It was called moose milk because we had a center on the football team whose nickname was Moose, and he's the guy that kind of invented it. So the stuff would run out after about an hour, but you just kept throwing sparkling water in and pretending you were loading it with stuff. And
so would you actually fill the champagne bottles up with sparkling water to
anything you could
just
get
to
away
pretend
with.
It was,
yeah.
So it was like cutting cocaine. You just threw baking soda in it.
Well, I don't know about that. I've never cut cocaine, but if that's what it's like.
Is that too far?
No, it's not too far. It's too far from me. I've actually never seen it other than on movies.
You never seen cocaine?
Never.
Come on. You lived through the 80s.
Never.
I don't believe you.
Never.
You were a lawyer in the 80s and you guys didn't go to a cocaine party.
Never.
All right. I'm
Never.
having a hard time believing.
No, well, it's like my kids didn't believe I didn't have pot until I was 26. But I was 26 when I had my first pot.
What was that experience? Do you remember?
It was fun. What's not fun?
No, I mean, was it in college or out of college by then?
Oh, I was out of college. I was in law school. Actually, I'm wrong. I was probably 28 years old because I had graduated law school, and I was defending a patent examiner in a deposition, and he came into my office a couple of days later and said, "Why don't you and your wife come on over to our house? We're in Falls Church and we party. Do you party?" I don't know what the hell he meant by that. Sure. So I went over there, and of course, he not only had it, he grew it in his basement. And I don't know if you were old enough to remember the Cohens.
Oh yeah, I remember their son David. He had quite the profanity mouth. We used to call him shit boy because he would cuss so much. Everything was out of his mouth.
Anyway,
shit.
Yeah, so that's the irony of the pot story is that I don't know if it was you so much, but some of the boys did not believe the story that I never had it till I was 28, because there was a photo of my friend Don Eddins and I when we were engineering students at 19, 20 years old, sitting in a government building with a desk in between us with a hookah, and on the pipes of the hookah, and we're smoking pipe tobacco.
In the government building, like what?
Pipe tobacco.
Yeah, I guess, everybody smoked back then.
Right,
you could smoke right
we
at
smoked
work, right?
pipes. Yeah. We thought pipes were cool. So somebody found that, might have been Tom, one of your brothers, and said, "There's no way that's not pot," because they didn't know you could smoke anything in there besides pot,
Oh man! But pot didn't have the social stigma like that it was in the '80s when they did the propaganda war and the Just Say No and Nancy Reagan crap. So back then it was not a big deal, right?
It was a very big deal, I guess, in the '60s. I just missed it because I had kids, and the people that I knew at that time had kids and were my age and probably didn't get exposed to pot either. Didn't mean we didn't drink beer and booze and all the other stuff, but no, I do not recall one instance in my life of being told, "We have pot, would you like some? We have marijuana, would you like some?" Until I met Jim Cohen. He's the reason. So,
Oh, he'll probably catch this, maybe.
No, yeah, I don't think so. But
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, so that was not. Was that a normal experience in your fraternity? Were drugs around, or was that just not popular
there
then?
were no drugs in the fraternity. There were drunks in the fraternity. I remember coming in there on a Sunday morning after a Saturday night party, and the 300-pound guy, the center from the football team, Ed Rutch, passed out on the stairs. You couldn't get upstairs in the place because he took up the whole stairs. He was so big, So nothing to be proud about.
No, but
In fact, a lot of kids, I think, flunked out because they couldn't handle, even if they didn't turn alcoholic, and certainly a couple of them were. Who in the hell can study when you're drunk?
oh, and the noise and the partying, it's hard to study.
The place was crazy.
I lived at the rugby house, and it was like you just had to go to the library. There's no peace.
There was no studying in the house.
No, it's not gonna happen.
None, zero. So you wanted to study, you went to the library.
Yeah, and this is kind of a strange scenario because, in my generation, there were drugs everywhere, but the athletes didn't really do them. Like in rugby, my situation, we were playing the same drinking games, being stupid, drinking, which is probably 10 times worse for you, by the way. But it was interesting because there were drugs everywhere, and none of my friends did them. Like I never went to a party where there was, marijuana or cocaine or anything on the tables.
Well, that's the thing. I mean,
I
I could be absolutely wrong about it, but if you just had pot and beer in this world, beer and liquor, pot's the safer of those. The problem is that, as I understand it, 80s, 90s, and maybe even before that, it's not just pot, because they do cocaine and other things that are dangerous and are addictive. Not that beer isn't addictive, it's amazing. You don't appreciate, even though what would be my first mother-in-law, the person who would be my first mother-in-law was an alcoholic, I did not appreciate until many years later, maybe my 30s or 40s, how prevalent alcoholism is in the world. I mean, there are a lot of people that function at their job who, when they get home, hit it. And who's to say what the experience is, whether it's good or bad? All I know is it was a lot of fun in the fraternity house.
Yeah, I mean, I look back and it's like that was a chunk of life. You were for 4 years you're allowed to be as drunk as you want, and that's the experience.
Yeah, and
it was a lot of fun.
In fact, you might have faked it just to be. I am drunk, just to look like you're cool.
We're going to take a little sidebar here. What's your opinion on the drug war, and what's your opinion on prohibition? Like, should things be illegal? Should not things be illegal?
Oh, it's two easy questions. Neither one of them should be illegal, and it would be a lot safer world, I think, if they were not illegal, because making them illegal makes them appear very attractive to young people. Quite frankly, I drank more beer probably in any one year of my 20s or college than I drank in my total 30s and maybe 40s and 50s. So it's not necessary that just because you drink, you'll become an alcoholic. That's a different issue. But the government controlling either one of those, prohibition went out, of course, and will probably never come back. And the idea that the government would not, federal government does not legalize marijuana is absurd. And if you legalized all drugs, you take away the contact of young people with where they get their marijuana from people who also have heroin and the other stuff. Whereas if you went to the pharmacy or the drugstore to get your pack of marijuana, you're not running into those people. And not to say that you still wouldn't have contact with them, but the states that are legalizing marijuana now, as long as they're not prosecuted by the federal government, are making good tax money to spend for colleges and other places, and it just makes sense.
Now, I mean prohibition as in a whole. Like, I agree with what you're saying. You never see people shooting each other on the corner for a pack of cigarettes because they're legal. How far do you go with this? Is somebody allowed to get heroin or cocaine if they don't hurt anyone? Should drugs be illegal at all?
Well, that's a tougher question because obviously you don't want kids, you don't want anybody, quite frankly, having heroin or cocaine. It's not good because it's addictive, and there are lots of, we're having an epidemic in this world in this country right now, so many people dying of it. But I sure as hell don't want teenagers and kids getting it. And, you know, some of the laws that restrict beer sales and cigarette sales to anyone under 21 work to some extent. A major portion of it works. Should be the same for the drugs like that. And pot too. You know, you got to be 21, and then it's your body.
I got you. So it's once you're an adult that can process the decision, you should be allowed to do whatever you want with your body.
Well, that presumes that a 21-year-old is bright enough and mature enough to process. So, you know, there's 60-year-olds that aren't bright enough. But yes, there has to be a line somewhere.
You have to have an arbitrary number because otherwise there's 12-year-olds that are more mature than, 30-year-olds. So
absolutely,
should they be allowed to drink and do whatever they want if they're mature? And how do you decide that? It's tough.
No, that's right.
It's tough. Very good. Thanks for that. All right, so on that topic, let's talk about get back.
It's another reason I'll never be president.
Oh, because of that? No, I don't know. It's going that way.
I'm kidding.
Going that way.
Well, it depends on how much longer we got the Trumpers in the world.
We're not getting into that.
Yeah, we're not getting into that, right? Right, yeah, let's stay out of that.
We're talking philosophy here. What do you own your body, or does the government own your body? Should you be able to do with what you want, or is there a line that you cross? Like, where are you on that?
Well, I think that, if you're talking about a person who wants to die in peace instead of through some horrible drug, let's use that as an example, I think that person should have the right to do that. And states that allow it, assisted suicide, I think that certainly makes sense. You should own your body. It's the same for me, on the right of pro-choice. It's exactly the same issue in the sense that it's a woman's body to make a decision about whether it was painful as it is, and whatever religious feelings they may have been influenced by, which may control that woman's decision, and that's fine. It's her choice. If she will not have an abortion, even though she doesn't want to have a child, she has it and gives it to donate for adoption. That's her choice. If she decides that she wants to have an abortion, and it's a shame we don't have a better word for it because it's been painted so much. If she wants to have it, she should be able to have it. And I'm not saying it's not something you discuss with the father. If you're a certain religion that says it's you'll go to hell for it, and you believe that. I don't think any religion says you'll go to hell for it. But I'm using that example. It's still your decision. So, yeah.
So all these things are connected. It's a question of, do you own your body? Can you do whatever drugs you want if you don't hurt anyone? Can you, like you said, to have an abortion, can you?
Well, you beg the question.
All that together.
You beg the question, though, when you say, can you do whatever you want to your body with drugs as long as you don't hurt someone? Someone is you. Also.
Yeah, but are you?
But it's your choice.
Yeah, should you protect me from myself?
No.
Very good. Wow, we got good philosophy here. I'm proud of you. Coming around.
I've always been there.
Have you? Have you always thought that?
Yeah.
Okay. I was hoping it was me. So we're going to get back into his college years. We're talking about fraternity years. The Potomac River beer keg disaster. Tell us about this.
Well, remember that I wrote that book to just put in a few things to tell my kids that didn't know me in my college years that maybe I was a little crazy too. And the Potomac beer keg disaster is just one of quite a few examples. There's a place on the canal right above the Potomac River called Widewater. And somehow in the springs, every spring, somebody get the idea, let's get a keg of beer and go down there, maybe take a few dates, build a little fire, and have fun. Sometimes somebody would actually dive in that water. Not the river, but in the water, in the canal. So one year we're rolling the beer keg down, and I was not the roller, but when you're rolling the beer keg down, and somehow it got loose and rolled off the side of the canal walkway down, bumping down into trees and down, I don't know, 100, 200 feet, and went into the Potomac River. Because everybody's chasing the damn beer keg, trying to catch it before it goes in the river. Well, it did go in the river, and it's a very dangerous area there of the river. It's right by the Great Falls below it. And so the beer keg was gone. And I don't remember to this day, you know, I probably remember when I wrote that 2 years ago, if anyone actually went in to get it or not, because it would be insanity to go in, but maybe they did.
Yeah, you said, fortunately, no one was crazy enough to dive in, as the river was very rapid at that point.
Yeah.
But so you basically had this keg, you guys were rolling.
We had a party.
Got away,
yeah,
and it became like a steamroller and ran through the woods.
Yeah, so there was the party with,
down to the canal.
You know, how many of us, 6, 8, 10 with dates and nothing to drink. And, you know, if you're 17 or 18-year-old and you think partying is, you got to have booze, it was not a lot of fun.
So if you live near Great Falls and you find a 50-year-old keg in the water,
that's it.
It's probably still full.
I don't know. I don't know.
All right, we're going to talk about weeknight beer drinking competition and finger snapping.
Yeah.
Explain to me what the finger snapping and the drinking games.
Yeah, we already told you that one of the drinking games, of course, was you call thumper.
Yeah, we pounded on the table.
Yeah, and I don't know.
Are you in this picture of it?
Yeah, I might have taken it. Let me see. I don't see me.
Okay, but, so you probably took that one.
Yeah, but that's a good picture. I mean, that shows that
it's in action. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of rockets going on, and this guy Bocas is the one up front. He's nailed. Yeah, he's the one that has to chug that beer, and so you know that's if you get him enough times, he's out of the game pretty soon because he can't. You know,
here's a target, huh?
Yeah,
he's the easy one to...
It's crazy. I mean, but it's typical of what you expect from youths of, you know, under 21. They're not exactly thinking about not having fun, and seeing someone destroyed at the table was fun.
Well, tell me about finger snapping.
Okay,
What's finger snapping?
There's a picture in the book, but finger snapping was having these two fingers click together when you snap in a certain way. And I don't have the volume anymore, but if you're quiet, you can hear it. Used to be that you could hear that from 20 feet. Snap, 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 snap. But anyway, so that picture is of my buddy Dick Crafter, who was the greatest finger snapper of all time. He was 6'5" and he had long fingers. He and I are a little bit shit-faced at somebody's place. I think it might have been Fred Stevenson. And I got a cigarette in the other hand. And we're both having a finger snapping contest.
Yeah, and you mentioned in the book that you smoked a lot of cigarettes, so much that you were taking 2 to 3 showers a day. Tell me about your smoking of cigarettes and how that started.
Yeah, well, somewhere around 17, maybe even 16, I concluded that pipe smoking was really a cool thing. Now, that sounds really strange. You don't see anybody smoke pipes now, but you did then. And so this buddy of mine, college buddy, Don Eddins, and I went to Bertram's pipe shop, famous for presidents that have bought their pipes there. It was right in D.C. on 14th Street, and we'd buy the seconds, the rejects, because they'd have a little mistake in them or something. And so while the primary really good pipe might be $15 at that time, the second might be $4. So we got pipes and we started smoking, and then somehow surrounded by cigarette smokers at a time when there was no Surgeon General warning and nobody was talking about it being dangerous, quite frankly, until a few years later, started smoking cigarettes and chain smoke them. The year that I was president of the fraternity, I lived in the fraternity house. I'd wake up in the morning, and there's a window right next to my bed. While I'm still in bed, I'd reach over and grab a Marlboro and light it. It's disgusting. And worse than that is I liked it. And I stank. Because your clothes stink, your hair stinks, you stink if you're a smoker.
What was a popular cigarette back then?
Probably Marlboro, Winston's, and Salem's were the 3 most popular cigarettes. And, you know, I can't
remember which ad, but what's the one that doctors prefer? Do you remember the...
Yeah, Kent.
Kent
Kent cigarettes. More doctors prefer Kent than any other. Yeah. And smokers who know now smoke the Big O. I'd walk a mile for a Camel.
Let me see
Lucky Strike means fine tobacco. What were some of the others?
It tastes like a cigarette should? Which one's that?
Winston tastes good like a cigarette should.
There you go. It's important knowledge.
Yeah.
But then you switched to pipes, which you kind of picked your own tobacco,
actually,
right?
I smoked pipes at the same time as cigarettes.
So what's the difference? Because I've never smoked
enormous. Cigarettes just really, created to burn your lungs up. A pipe will do the same job, but a pipe, you pick the tobacco. There are different Latakia, Perique. There are different brands of tobacco, how they're cut, whether it's a Turkish cut, whether it's, and the tobacco itself has different smells. And then, of course, they stink them up. There was something called cherry blend tobacco, and if you walk down the street and you could smell the stuff coming, it was like, the women wear very strong perfumes. Some people liked a pipe that smelled that way, but I liked GBD Original. It was British, came in a can, and it was Latakia, Perique, and stretched. And you build the inside of the pipe. You knew how to pack it. It was a process, and it was nice. And pipe smokers, even if you see one today, they always look like they're high. It's like they're, just kind of drifting off. Their eyes are glazed. And I don't know if you were high or not, but it was very peaceful.
Is it much more intense than a cigarette? Like the buzz you get from the nicotine? Or
no,
what?
I don't think so.
It's just a cool... Did you own a smoking jacket? Tell me you had a smoking jacket. Come on.
If I did, I don't remember.
Lounging around in a cool
if I did, I don't remember. And if I did and do remember, I would lie.
But they're awesome. I don't even smoke, and I want a smoking jacket.
But Jesus, she just stank. I kept showering all day long.
When did you quit?
The day my best friend died of lung cancer, September 28th, 1972.
I can't believe you remember that. Who's your best friend?
It was a fellow named Bill Cochran. He was my first my first boss. He hired me for my first lawyering job, my first lawyering boss. And he was much older than me, very wise man, ton of fun. And kind of like he adopted me as a son and friend. And, we did a lot of things, just the two of us. Went to his cabin down at Ocracoke. And, drive around in the dune buggy and just had a lot of fun. He's a great guy. And when he died of it, I had tried to quit like 20 times before, probably. That's an exaggeration, but a lot of times. Just said, that's it. Why are you smoking? He had quit smoking 10 years earlier, but he died of lung cancer. He'd smoked all his life until then.
Let's talk about your fraternity days with the Pike TGIF and Phil Flowers in the TNTs.
Yeah, that was a great time. Again, we had a pretty good party house. And to make money, we'd have the TGIF parties at our fraternity. The other fraternities were much too smart because it was just a way of destroying your house. But you charge us either $1 or $2 at the door, and the idea was to have promise you all the beer or booze you could drink, beer usually, and dancing. And so we got a reputation of throwing these parties, and like I think you have a picture of the outside of the Pike House with everybody hanging out outside, and 500 people probably in it. And I was social chairman for several of the years, and I like to get live bands. Phil Flowers was the #1 draw in the Washington area, black guy, was a great singer, and his band was called the TNTs after TNT Tribble was the guy's name. Five black guys, and they played at the Hayloft bar in Washington. So they were a favorite place to go to dance, and they were well known. But it was easy to hire them because they come in there and play from 1 to 5, and then they go off to their gig down at the Hayloft. And so it was extra money for them. And so I used to advertise we'd have Phil Flowers and the TNTs. That assured a big crowd.
And they would sing, of course.
Oh, they'd sing,
Shout, right?
Shout, absolutely.
Were they the ones that wrote Shout?
I don't know if they wrote Shout, but they recorded a version of Shout at our fraternity. And for years, I had a 45 that said recorded live at the Phi Kappa House, Washington, D.C. I don't know where that is, and it's gone forever. I went on, looked him up on the website. You can get some of his recordings. I don't think he's alive anymore, but it does not list that one.
And do you feel like, again, we go back to the famous movie Animal House, because they sing Shout in that, and they jump up and down in togas? Did you guys do all that stuff?
Somebody Day is his last name.
Otis
Day.
Otis Day, yeah.
Yeah. And that was like...
That's what I'm saying. I think they were your party, these writers.
And of course you go to 1961, 62 in there. The twist is big. Chubby Checker had #1 hit on the same song 2 years in a row. Only time that's ever happened, where the same artist did the same song 2 different times and it hit #1. So the twist was real big. Even Ray Charles was doing twist. And so, you know, the party's just loaded with twist music. It's great. It was fun. Beer and twisting and women, all good when you're 18.
Now,
19.
You mentioned something about the irony is 4 years later, they'd be the center of a riot after Martin Luther King was killed. So tell me about what that meant with Phil Flowers.
Well, I don't know that there's anything with Phil Flowers.
Oh, am I reading something different here?
Yeah, you are, I think.
Oh, I jumped a page. Yeah. The fact, black musician.
Oh, we went to, here's what it is. Sure, I see. Phil Flowers at one of these parties, Phil Flowers at one of the nights at his bar. I was there with a date. Her name was Peggy Scogan. And Phil Flowers invited the two of us to join him for the all-night party the black musicians had every Friday and Saturday night at some place down at 14th and U Street, which was in a black area. I was familiar with 14th and U because I'd go hear jazz there at the Bohemian Caverns. So Peggy and I went down with him when he closed at 1 o'clock in the morning, was closing time then by law. And we went down there and we went in and it was kind of down in the basement. And there's this big party going on and we're the only 2 white people there. And it was great. You know, I felt totally comfortable with it. There was no problems. The irony that you're talking about is just 2 years later, Martin Luther King was, 3 years later, was assassinated. And the awful death of that, of course, was incredible trauma on everybody, but especially the black community. And then they burned down the 14th, the U Street corridor. The H Street and U Street corridors were burned to the ground, which were the neighborhoods the blacks went to enjoy. They burned their own area down. It was Washington burning down, 1968 maybe. So that was the irony.
Let's talk about the toilet, the bus, and the police.
Yeah, Jerry Ramos was one of the fraternity brothers who is no longer alive. Sadly died of alcohol years later. But at the time, you know, we didn't know anything about that. He was just fun, probably because he was always drunk. And one of the Saturday nights at one of the parties, Jerry takes a commode off of the 5th floor of our building that wasn't being used and carried it down, put it in the middle of G Street, and sat on it and took a newspaper and sat there reading it. Now this is like midnight, one maybe 11, 12 o'clock. And we hear this roar outside, and of course I go out on the steps of our fraternity, and there's a fraternity house across the street. They're out on the steps, they're all roaring. Jerry's drinking beer, reading the newspaper. Well, they're roaring because a bus comes up behind them. It was not Metro then, I don't know what they call the DC Transit. And they're honking the horn at Jerry to move.
He's on G Street, like
right in the middle of the street. And Jerry's not moving.
Very busy street.
We're cheering him on. So all of a sudden we hear the message that the police have been called. They're coming. I don't know how we heard it. And so, you know, sure enough, the police car pulls up through the alley that right at the intersection, and Jerry just drops his paper and beer and runs. We all run. But they knew exactly which fraternity would have done that. And they came right into our place and said, get that commode off the street or you're all going to jail. And so, of course, we got it off. And, they were friendly. The police officers kind of knew us because, hey.
They came to your parties?
Well, sometimes. At the end of the party, sometimes they'd show up. And that very night, several of them came back and had a beer with us, But that was the incident. It was historic.
So let's talk about Linda Abrams and other distractions like playing bridge and what happened in the end of your college years.
Yeah, somewhere I think it was my fourth out of the five years. I met Linda Abrams. She was great. We had a great time together. We spent a lot of time together. And that coupled with the fact that I discovered bridge for the first time became an addiction. When I'd wake up at 8 or 9 in the morning, I'd go right to the student union where there was maybe 8 or 10 tables of people playing bridge. It's interesting. That seemed to be something that was going on at that time in colleges. And so, I'd find my place at a bridge table and sometimes play for the whole damn day. Now, that's at a time when, there's classes. And the only thing that broke off from that were the afternoons that I worked. I did get to my job. I didn't want to get fired. But I played bridge, and that was maybe 3 days a week. The other 5 days a week, or 4 days a week, I'm out there playing bridge, Saturdays, Sundays, too.
Was there money involved in bridge back then? Was it like gambling?
No, it was just...
It was just bragging rights.
You were playing bragging rights for status. There were the really good bridge players, and you were working toward playing on their table and beating them,
Got it.
And it's just a great, it's a thinking game. So that coupled with, by the time I left the bridge table, it was because I had a date with Linda, many of those nights, not all of them. And, so when was I going to study? Well, sure enough, that affected the grades. My friend Don Eddins would cram me for finals 2 weeks before, thank God. And,
Are you a good crammer? Are you efficient at cramming?
I was an incredible crammer. and then a week later I was an incredible thumper. I lost it all, But, so I used to get B's and A's because Don would cram me up. And, but this time I had waited too long, I think. And, it's hard to remember 60 years ago, but Don might have graduated by there. I had my last year of school without Don helping me. And it could be that he had graduated by then, but I didn't do so well that semester, so it was not a good thing.
Was that your first serious girlfriend?
Oh, Pat,
Linda Abrams?
I think your mom, Abrams. No, your mom was a serious girlfriend.
Before this lady?
Well, no, she was before too, but she went off to college. So, like my first year of college, your mom was still here, and we were dating, and then she went off to college, and I'd see her in the summertime when she'd come home. But we both were dating. At least I'm pretty sure she was dating. I think that's what we both knew that. But Linda was a very serious girlfriend, absolutely. She was serious. And the other girls I dated in college were fun, but Linda was serious.
And what happened with that? Did you break it off with Linda to date Mom?
No, I think that what happened there is Linda graduated a year before me and left, and that was it. So it wasn't serious enough that it continued after that. And your mom came home that last year, and we dated. And then we got married after I graduated a week later. Yeah.
We'll get to that later.
Yeah,
but
okay.
What about this picture of you guys in front of the house?
Yeah.
Are you in that?
Yeah, I'm at the top with a very bright tie and my arm around this blonde woman.
Very bright tie. Oh, I see.
It was the only woman in there.
Raising your fist up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's the...
Yeah, you are with the only girl there. How'd that happen?
Well, for some reason, I think this was a picture for the yearbook. Each fraternity was supposed to take a picture or something. And she was the dream girl of Phi Kappa Alpha. Every year we picked a dream girl. And it was usually the girl who was in the most serious relationship with any of the fellows that were there. And there weren't many there in serious relationships, because who in the hell would want these guys that were, half drunk all the time? But she was dating a fellow, and she was homecoming queen. She was all kinds of stuff. She was a cheerleader. She was an A student. And she was selected as the dream girl that year. So we wanted her in the picture. So we all got on the steps at night, and obviously had been having a few before, and they took that picture.
Tell me about the picture where you're wearing a George Washington hat and you're holding a bust.
Yeah. That is another friend, Don Ardell, who became president of the student council, and the other picture that's next to it, was running for president of student council. And he convinced me and one or two other brothers to run for some of the other offices. I ran for vice president, which was stupid. I had no interest in it. But, he said run for it, so I ran for it. We both won. But that was my picture of me running for that office.
That was your campaign
That was my campaign picture, next to hugging George Washington.
It's a great shot.
Yeah.
And then what's the shot where there's three guys? Is this you?
Yeah.
Right there?
And
that's the cool jacket?
Yeah, that's the student council meeting. The guy on the left is the president, Don Ardell, who was a great athlete.
The one that is back to you, or the one?
No, the one that's facing us.
Got it.
Was a great athlete and played on the basketball team that won the last basketball championship for GW in 1968, I think. Or no, 62, the Southern Conference tournament. And then he went on to NCAA and had to guard Jim Bradley, who later became a senator, who was a hell of a basketball player. Of course, Princeton won that game, so we didn't get very far in the NCAA.
All right. What is, thank God for Don Eddins, my best friend and tutor. Tell me about all that you played jazz, blues, rock music. Give me an idea what happened here.
Yeah, Don, I don't know how Don and I even met, but somewhere around that end of that, maybe the second year, I met Don and just had immediate friendship. And he and one other fellow kind of introduced me at the age of 17, I guess, to jazz. So we started going to jazz clubs, and somehow we're able to drink at the clubs. That was very important to us, get a beer. And Don graduated either first or near the top of a class of several hundred engineers, and that ain't easy. Nobody else that I know has done that except maybe Lindsay at UVA. But Don, kind heart that he was, because I was a kind of a party guy, and very young, very immature, would do the cramming for me.
Oh, he's the one.
And Ozzy Cramer, another buddy, and we'd meet at my parents' house and camp in for a week or two. My parents would cook for us, and we'd just stayed in the basement and go through all the courses.
You said your parents were really cool about your friends coming over.
They were great.
And
they were great. We had a lot of parties out there.
This guy, Don Eddins, ended up being your best man at your wedding.
He was best man at Pat and my wedding, your mom's and on my wedding, and he became director of Applied Physics Lab, which is no small potato, and has had an incredible career that has gone from designing rockets to being on submarines, to all kinds of stuff that he's done over the years. He's now retired. He and I have...
You stay in touch?
Stay in touch.
Okay. Good. You post pictures of cats on his Facebook page or anything?
I'm good.
All right. Then finally you graduate in 1963 with an electrical engineering degree.
Right.
So give me an idea what that was like to graduate.
I don't think I was mature enough to really understand, except it was good not to have to go to class. Everything then was measured in terms of what's happening next week. I don't know if anybody, I'm sure that 22-year-olds are brighter than I was at 22, but today. But, it was just, okay, it's over. And I got a job, done my interviews with General Electric and Westinghouse and 2 or 3 other companies, got my offers, and took a job with General Electric in Philadelphia and Schenectady, New York. One small thing that happened, I say it as a joke, 1 week after graduating, your mom and I got married.
Yeah,
Can you imagine? You got to come out of school, you get married.
Let's get married. And we're going to talk about that next chapter. Next chapter 6 is all about your marriage and your career and your family in law school.
Sure.
So we're going to save that for next chapter.
Yeah.
So tune in, stick with us, and we'll roll on to that chapter. Do you have anything else you need to say before that?
Life is good when you're having fun.
All right, thanks. I hope you enjoyed those stories. Hang with me. I should hopefully have chapter 6 out in a few weeks. Until then, if you missed all the other chapters, I'm going to put, you see a little window open here that will lead you back to all the older chapters of the book. All you have to do is click that link and follow it in. Enjoy it.